Hey guys, if you're watching this, thanks for tuning in. I'm here with Luke today. Luke is an amazing friend of mine and long-term client, and we've built an incredible relationship together over the years. Luke is a business owner, a very successful business owner in the public adjusting space, helping people that have lost their homes due to natural disasters, and just giving a lot of support in that way. It's a great mission. And yeah, Luke, is so great to take the time today to just talk a little bit more about the deep work we've done together, and just talk about the power of presence, the power of a relaxed, grounded nervous system, especially for high achievers, for people that, are super ambitious and work a lot and are successful. Especially those kinds of people need that nervous system support sometimes more than anyone, to help them be grounded and relaxed and present in times of stress, right? And to become more resilient energetically. And me and Luke have done a lot of work over the years, and he's become so much more grounded and present. It's really been amazing to see. And yeah, Luke, I'd love for you to give a little bit of an introduction about you and your background and your experience as a high achiever, and yeah, and then we'll dive into a little bit of an interview together.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, thanks so much, brother. And the work you do speaks volumes, obviously, just from the message you put out there and the other men that you help in the space. So
Mhm.
super grateful for you, my brother. But yeah, a
Thanks,
little bit
man.
about me. I'm from Warner Robins, Georgia. I've been in the public insurance adjusting space now for 6 years. Before that, I owned a roofing and restoration company for 15 years. So I've been in
Mhm.
insurance restoration for over 20 years now. I come from a blue collar family, working class. My dad worked in a factory. My mom was a nurse. They were two ships
Mhm.
passing in the night. And my dad would work night shift. My mom would work during the day. So
Mhm.
me and my brother typically would be home with either mom or dad, depending on the day. And I moved to Atlanta when I turned 22 years old, and that was in 2006 when I moved to Atlanta. So I lived there for about 17 years. I have two beautiful sons, Isaiah and Noah. Isaiah's
Mhm.
17, Noah's 12 now. And then I have a stepdaughter that is, she's 8 years old now. So got a
Mhm.
beautiful family and a beautiful career that, I've built and constructed throughout the years from my knowledge and expertise. But obviously, with all these things come life, right? Stress that
Yeah.
happens when you have kids in multiple states, dealing with multiple different households, multi-state businesses, everything in between. Obviously, things can get a little hectic,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
that's why I started searching for help with trying to get myself back into a place of peace. Right. Um, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, man, it was like I felt like I was always pouring out of my cup to help everybody in my life,
Yeah.
and no one was really pouring back into Luke but Luke, right?
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but sometimes I felt as if I would try my best to do the little things that I know that kept me on track or kept me feeling good, but sometimes I didn't even
Yeah.
have time to do that. So
Right.
when I
Right.
found your work, man, it really changed my life. We've
Mm.
been working together since I think early 2020, and
Yeah.
we're going on over 5 years now. And it's just impacted me in a way that helps me regulate stress better, helps me explain myself better when it comes to communicating my emotions. Because at
Mm.
times in my past, because of the way I was brought up and some of the things I went
Mm.
through as a kid,
Yeah,
I
for
had
sure.
some stressful situations in life,
Of
so
course.
sometimes I would be more reactive.
Yeah.
But your work helped anchor me and ground me into my body again so that I could actually speak from power and not from fear, right? Not from
Mhm.
pain, not from anything that was not of me, right? So
Yeah.
I truly
Yeah.
appreciate you for your work, my brother.
Thank you for that, brother. What a beautiful introduction to your life, and yeah, just so real. And yeah, I mean, what I've always loved about you, from the moment that we met, is like, I know we had some calls, early 2020, and kind of getting to build that relationship. And I always felt like you were in the world, you were doing your work, you were doing hard work, putting in, great effort and making your life and your family's life better, but you've always, also from the moment we first connected, I've always felt this deep spiritual attunement in you, right? This desire to be in alignment with spirit, right? This desire to go deeper in yourself and embody your highest version, but not always the highest version of what society makes out to be the highest version, but really the highest version, spiritually speaking, right? And embodying that. And I've always felt this drive in you and this desire to really be that. Um, and also, of course, witnessing the struggles of life that you've had, that make it hard sometimes to fully embody that, especially with all the stress and the hard work and running a business, running a team of 8 people, all this stuff, right? And so you've always impressed me as someone that had so much responsibility for family, people in your company, so much pressure in a way on you, and still always, to you, the best of your ability, prioritizing connection with spirit, and I think that's kind of where we met and found so much resonance, is that you had that connection to spirit. And my work, as you've experienced over the years, can go really deep when it comes to anchoring ourselves in the presence of spirit. Ultimately, even though for me, I help high achievers, reduce stress, reduce overwhelm. At the core of it, at the core of its essence, is something so much deeper, right? Which is really becoming more and living from the presence of our spirit, from the presence of our being. So we're not run so much by egoic patterns, right? Run by things that don't really matter at the end of the day, right? And that's where I've always really enjoyed our work, because I feel like we really dove deep together in anchoring this presence. Presence is the cornerstone and foundation of the work that I do. I feel the work that I do is different to a lot of coaching out there, because it first and foremost goes to anchoring ourselves in deeper presence and living from that space, right? And I'd love to ask you, man, from experiencing that, I know we've had a lot of sessions where we did this presence and energy work, that I could feel how deep it went into your system, how your system, almost like your nervous system, like drank that in, and was like really feeling that. I'm curious, like for people, listening, that perhaps have not so much experience with, um, how it can feel like, and empowering it can feel like, to be so extremely present. I would love for you to kind of explain or share, like, what those moments or that experience was like for you, and how that integrated into your life, post these sessions we've done.
Yeah. So for me, the presence work was uh, easier to receive when I was more open to wanting the work, right?
Yeah,
I think it takes someone's willingness to look at things within themselves in order to get the help they need.
100%.
I myself knew that I had a past like everyone does, and I have trauma just like everyone does, but I can't let that define who I am today.
Yeah.
But at times, we need someone to help facilitate pulling that out of us, in my opinion. We
Yeah,
can't
that's a great way of putting
always,
it.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can't always just pull it out ourselves and
Yeah.
say, because a lot of times when it comes out, it's in a reactive way because something inside of us got triggered,
Hmm.
and then it comes up to the surface and births out of
Yeah.
us.
Right.
And it can birth out in a multitude of different ways.
Hmm.
So the way that I started with you was is, hey, I need some help with some things that I'm dealing with in my life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You you checked in on that, you tapped in on that, you prayed on that, and you basically were able to help me facilitate through what's inside of me coming out in a way that I didn't feel like I had to be guarded. So
Yes. Yes. That's, yeah.
for me, it was the act of, hey, I asking, right?
Mm.
Because ask and you shall receive is what
There
the
we go.
scripture says, right?
Yeah. Right.
And it's
Yeah.
that simple of, hey, ask and you shall
Yeah.
receive.
Right.
Because without the ask, you can't receive.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
what that is tied to is ego and pride at times, where we
For
don't want
sure.
to ask for help.
Yeah, we think we can handle it all ourselves. We should
Yeah.
be strong enough, especially as men in this society. Asking for help is so hard, because we've been trained, like, if we're asking for help or show any kind of weakness, we're showing ourselves as weak. And then how are people going to perceive us? Are we still going to have a standing in society? There's a lot of risks that we feel in our nervous system of being vulnerable, and that's
Yeah.
why. why you reaching out and connecting to this work was a powerful, courageous move on your end, especially with the position that you were in, because facing these things and letting things be seen and felt is harder than just almost harder in a way, not ultimately, but in the beginning, than just going with the autopilot of the experiences you're in, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, that was a bold move in a way. And I always encourage anyone, especially men that struggle, with emotions, with yeah, with inner feelings of not being good enough, to receive the support where that can be okay, to receive love for that, the courage to show that, right? Because everyone's struggling with things, and you can portray the most put together image online or in the world, right? But at the core, everyone still has wounds and pains, and to be seen in that, to be loved in that, to be held in that is, for me, is one of the most important things, to have people around you that support you and see you for your soul and your spirit despite the challenges that you have, right? They don't make it something weak about you. They see it as a strength, right? A deeper realness that comes through. And that's one of the things that I feel like you've really developed over the years, is like just a deeper level of vulnerability and realness, and talking about your experience, your emotions, and letting that be seen, yeah, I'm curious for you, like, um, when I know in our work, we at moments when kind of create a safe space for our inner child, for the inner parts in us, right? I'm curious how you experience a shift in the relationship you have with yourself, right? Over the years of doing this work, how have you noticed a shift in how you relate to you and yourself?
Yeah, the shift that I noticed within myself was I felt more grounded within my
Yeah,
body. I didn't
yeah,
feel as like I didn't feel like I had to put on a front for anybody anymore.
right,
It was almost as if I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, I guess is what the term is, right? Where I felt
right,
like I had to put this version of myself out there to the
right,
world because that's what I think I am.
right, right, right.
And that image of myself shed away real quickly because I started realizing that was an egoic version of myself that I was presenting in a
Yeah,
prideful way.
right, right.
And I think the ego is important to have at times, but I also think it's
Sure.
important to also recognize it when it's coming out in ways that aren't our best version.
Right. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think ultimately it helped me separate the layers between the ego, the pride, and myself, which
Mm,
helped me cultivate a message better from my heart space as a leader.
yeah. That's powerful. Yeah, I feel that. I really feel the shift you've undergone in that regard. And I love what you said, is like recognizing the ego in us, and I also love that you shared, it's good to have an ego sometimes, because there's almost this idea in personal development and spiritual growth is like, oh, like get rid of your ego. But like, who's the one trying to get rid of the ego, right? It's just a different layer, a different version of the ego, right? And I've always been so intuitive, and I've sensed people that, had great intentions. But when they say these things, I'm like, okay, who's the one saying that? And I love what you said, because ego is the way, in a way, how we express ourselves in the world. But what I love to call it is, let's let's work on things so we can have an integrated ego, where the spirit of our soul leads the way, and our ego is kind of the tool that is being used to express in the world, right? And in that way, I think it's a really loving relationship we can build with the ego, where it's not like this adverse relationship. Oh, I'm going to push away the ego. I'm going to, I'm going to punish it or whatever. I know you said something a few sessions ago where you said, I'm learning more and more that love is the only way, right? And that is also true in the relationship to our own ego, right? We have to almost love it so deeply and hold it in reverence and in respect and compassion for all, because the ego is the part of us that's gone through all the pain and the trauma and, you know so much it's gone through, right? the spirit of our soul beyond all of that is untouched. And I know we've tapped into that so many times in our sessions, right? The spirit of our soul and our spirit is untouched. It's this vast presence of wholeness, perfection, and it isn't impacted by the trauma. Yet the ego is the one that is kind of push into all directions by the constant remembrance of trauma and pain, right? And it's vulnerable, it's fragile. And so, I've always, and I think we've really done a lot of work on that together, prioritized a loving relationship to self, because even in self-development and personal development, I still see outdated frameworks sometimes where it's like we have to push through, we have to get rid of things that we don't like. But for me, the invitation has always been, let's not look at what to get rid of. Let's look at what we can get curious about and learn to love deeper, right? Um, and I know that you've made big leaps in that, moments where we really sat with our feelings, our vulnerability, that part of our ego, and learn to love on that part of us rather than rejecting it, denying it, which would only lead to further fragmentation, right? Um, but I love what you said, and I would love for you to kind of dive into that maybe a little bit more. You said, the work we've done has helped you feel grounded and more present, right? And one thing that I see a lot with high achievers, and just something that I've kind of been aware of, is this constant drive for more, right? More results, more success, more things, right? More status, more, right? And I think that is a trap at times because it disconnects us from the relationship with spirit and actually being at the most relaxed, grounded place we can be, where our deepest power flows from, right? And that's what I've always appreciated about you seeking out this kind of work, because you could have gone to hundreds of different coaches, that tell you, that promise you, oh, we're going to get to XYZ goals in 6 months. But I think you also were feeling into what really has depth and resonance, right? And I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit more around why you feel like presence and being grounded in ourselves and present and relaxed in our nervous system is so important for high achievers like yourself to thrive in today's world. Curious your feelings on that and thoughts.
Yeah, so for me, I've dealt with a couple different things that have sometimes prevented me from being present.
Of course.
In my past, I've dealt with some anxiety and some, I think, in my opinion, OCD and ADD
Mm, right.
feelings. Not going to label them right, but
Sure. Yeah.
these are experiences that I think I've had in the past that I had
Yeah.
to, you know, figure out how to manage, right? And also figure out how to manage that with running a company and being a dad and being a husband and all this other stuff that comes with life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of what I started learning was is that a lot of this stuff that we deal with on a physical level, when it comes to we feel a certain way, whether it's we wake up
Mm,
and we may have brain fog, and then we have to go into,
sure.
man, I got to do something about this brain fog to feel like I can do my job, right?
Mm,
Or whatever it may be. Sometimes we get into these things that where we have to take medications or we have to take something to make us feel normal, right? Or
yeah. Yeah.
maybe I need to drink more caffeine, or maybe I need to take this pill, or whatever it may be.
Right. Right.
I started really diving into that side of myself to figure out what it was that Luke needs in order to feel optimal. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that led me down a path of realizing that, hey, man, for a while there, I took Adderall just to feel normal.
Right. Right.
For a while there, I would take a medication just to feel like I could function. And I started
Right.
looking at that and saying, hey, what are the effects of what I'm
Mm,
doing with this
mm,
medication that are long term?
right.
So I
Yeah.
started looking and analyzing at all the things I was doing to try to be this high achiever in the world, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
image that I'm trying to keep up with, that's an image that I see that I want to achieve, but it's also an image that the world sees.
Yeah.
And what I did was is I started basically tapping into figuring out what it is I'm chasing.
Mm.
What am I chasing, man? Like,
Right, right, right.
why is it a chase? Why does the world have to present something as if we have to go after it and get it? Right? Like,
Mm,
at the end of the day, do we need to be the chaser or do we need to be the one that's being chased as men?
mm,
We don't need to be the chaser because men, kings, they sit right there and things come to them.
mm,
And I started realizing, like, if I want to be in my king energy and the energy that I feel like the creator gave me, that God has blessed me with, that
mm-hmm,
he's entrusted me with, I need to
mm-hmm,
make sure I'm not chasing anymore, not
mm,
chasing the things that are not in alignment with myself, right? Not chasing the things that aren't going to help me get to that version of myself I see in the future. So I
mm,
started looking at the little things I was doing, right? So I
mm-hmm.
quit taking the medication, quit doing the Adderall because I'm like, that's not helping me. So I got off that. It took a little
Powerful,
time.
powerful.
I let my system reset, and then I just basically felt through the feelings of, hey, it wasn't the best feeling of going off of that. But you know what it did? It made me be present and sit with it.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately we have to look at all of these vices and these things in our life and start deconstructing them and saying, hey, is this truly helping me get to where I want to be? Or is this
Mm,
actually hurting me probably?
yeah.
So the
Yeah.
presence work for me brought in and ushered in that
Yeah.
version of myself that I needed to be for myself right now, not the past
Mm,
version, not the future version. It brought
right.
me into the right now. And that's where I
Mm,
was able to look at everything from a good lens of myself, from the
yeah.
inside, from my
Yeah.
heart, and
Right.
say, hey, are these things helping me? Or are they hurting me?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
what presence work did, man. It brought me into my body. So I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about the future. What does Luke need to do right now to get where he
Mm,
needs to be for
yeah.
whatever he has to do in life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
saying I have to be anywhere, right? Because
Right.
tomorrow's never promised for anybody. But at the end of the day, let's look at this. What do I have to do right now to handle the things that I need to handle in my life, right? To take care of
Yeah.
myself, my family, my business, and everything going on. So
Right. Right.
presence work is really what brought me into my body to be able to handle the tasks right now versus getting caught up in the past or focused on the future too much, right?
Mm, I love
And
that, dude. Yeah.
that's what gave me the strength in order to deal with the
Right.
things right now and not push them off or
Exactly.
I'll get to them eventually. No, no, the time is
Right.
now. And that's what presence
Yeah.
work did for me is right now.
Yeah. That's such a powerful way of putting it, brother, because I think what you're also kind of sharing here is like when you're in the present, when you're grounded in yourself and in what is here, not lost in your thought about what was, what's going to be, you actually have the highest amount of access to the intuitive clarity, which is spirit always communicating to us the way we need to go forward. And I think a lot of people, especially in the high achieving space, they try to do everything themselves, right? They feel like they need to control life, right? They feel like I need to be in control to make life happen the way I want. If I don't want to lose all my money or all my things, right, I need to control life, and it creates this overwhelming pressure on ourselves. And I'm sure I've experienced that, you've experienced that, we've all experienced that, right? But when you and you've done this so beautifully, when you let go into deeper presence, it's almost like you reconnect to a part of you that already knows what's needed, that is like the deepest wisdom possible that you couldn't even conjure up with your mind, right? You couldn't conjure
Mhm.
it up with controlling life. And that, in my experience, which is one of the most challenging initiations you can go through, you have to surrender to that inner guidance and let go of trying to control life. And in that, you have to face and be willing to have things sometimes collapse, to fall apart if they're old things needing to make
Mhm.
space for something new. And I know you've gone through different seasons in your life that are like that. I've gone through different seasons in my life that are like that, right? But to me, that actually makes for the most transformative inner journey is when we begin to really know inside without a shadow of a doubt, I surrender to something deeper in me because I cannot control all of this. Like I'm done. I'm exhausted. And sometimes our ego needs to just face the exhaustion over and over again to get to this place of soulful desire where we're like, I can't do it anymore. I need to surrender, right? And I think a lot of high achievers, and this is the work that I do and I want to help with, they're afraid of this place, right? They're afraid of letting go of control. They're afraid of surrendering to the inner wisdom, the inner guidance, and follow that no matter what. they still want to make things happen their way, not trusting that God has the most incredible plan for them when we just surrender, right?
Right.
And you've always struck me as someone that is so deeply at the core in your heart. There's just that desire. I want to surrender to the divine in me, to the God that has created me, and follow that guidance, no matter what has to be lost in order for renewal to birth, right? And you've always struck me as someone that really has that intention at the bottom of the heart, which is sometimes rare to find in this world, in my opinion. So kudos
Mhm.
to you for that, brother. And you know, we're going to slowly wrap up this interview, but so many amazing insights shared. I guess to kind of conclude this back and forth, I would love to ask you, like, you know, for high achieving people, you know, whether it's a business owner or a professional in a high role at a company that maybe often is faced with the stress and overwhelm and trying to manage all these things, you know, I'd love for you to just share very briefly how, um, in what way the presence and nervous system work can really make the difference in their lives versus just seeking out, you know, 5, 10 more things to chase after.
Yeah. So I've done it all. I've done cold plunging. I got an infrared sauna. I have all this stuff at my house. I have red
Yeah.
lights, PEMF mats, right? All the tools, right?
Yes.
I've got them all. I use them. They
Right.
all work great, right? They all make me feel great. But like at the end of the day, that's not doing the emotional work. Okay.
Mm, yeah.
Presence is where it takes the emotional side that we're sometimes guarding, right? Where we're putting a little shell over, and it lets that open up and bloom out so that you can actually
Mm,
water it and do what you need to do in order to be able to have that safe space in your heart so
yeah.
that you can birth out what you need to birth out. Because if you have any of these things that are trapped inside of you, they're only going to hurt you. They're not
Mm,
going to help you release and to be the optimal version of self. So it
mm.
doesn't matter how much of this cold plunging you do, infrared
That's a great point.
saunas,
Yeah.
breath work, that doesn't matter. Okay. At the end of the day, that's great and all for the physiology, right?
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
still have the emotional and spiritual side of the vessel that you have to take care of. Presence work is what allows you
Mm,
to get into a space to birth out those things deep within inside that are all from our past that you can't necessarily get to. And that's what it did for me, is it helped
mm,
me tap into those sides of myself, get within my body, feel that deep level
mm.
incantation that I can't just get myself into sometimes, but you're really good at getting me into there. So
Yeah.
that's
Appreciate that,
that's what it
brother.
did for me, man. It did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It brought me back to a place of peace within myself, so that
Yeah.
the stuff that I do already to optimize my body, it just made it even more optimal. Because when the
True.
vessel is clear of energetic blocks and emotional baggage and trauma, dude, sky is the limit. You feel way more optimal, like a way more optimal version of yourself. Like, yeah, imagine all the biohacking tools in the world and all the breath work and all the stuff, or even if you don't do that, right? Just go to imagine if you could just go to the gym and lift, right? And that's all therapeutic. But imagine you have all of that and the internal version of self that you need to be for yourself to show up for everything in your life. But you do that for
Mm,
yourself first in order
yeah.
to be the best version for everybody.
Mm,
That's what presence work does.
mm. That's such a great way of putting it, brother. I appreciate it. And I just want to share. It's so amazing how much I feel like you've come into your body more, you know, like you're more grounded in you. I know in the past you struggled in moments with just having so much to deal with and a lot of thoughts and a lot of things. And, you know, your whole energy field is just more present and you're in your body more, you know, and that's what I want to speak to just to conclude this, right? Is like when you do the deep presence work, which is basically tapping into the true nature of your spirit and you integrate into your body and you open up you open up your emotional system and being receptive to what emotions there are rather than pushing them down or denying them or avoiding them. That is true integration, which I believe is really, really important for a life meaningfully and well lived, right? And so, thank you so much, brother, for taking the time today.
So
Such a blessing in my life and such a blessing to have this relationship with you. I know we'll be in touch for a lifetime here. And in all the different ways. And yeah, thanks for taking the time and sharing your experience with presence and nervous system work.
Anytime, brother. Thank you.
Man. Thank you.
Love you, brother.